I'm devastated with the outcome of the Snowy River Environmental Flows campaign. Government's made undertakings and they haven't followed through. And it's a very poor show as far as the interface between the people and government if governments can't be trusted to honour their undertakings. Snowy River is such an important stream in what it represents for the whole country. If we can't get it right for the Snowy River, then no other river or stream's got any chance in this land.
It seems to me that the Snowy River has a problem much like the Colorado. There's too many dams. It's sacrificing the things that are important to quality of life, which is a flowing river and a healthy river. It seems like to me nobody's going to win in the end. It seems like the farmers are not going to be able to farm. And it seems to me that the cities are not going to be able to be happy and that there's a huge decline in the quality of life. Something has to change. We can't stick to these old paradigms of hydropower. We need new ways to live on the planet that ensure that we will be here in 1,000 years, because we're already losing what we have right now. Dams are not the answer. Dams are the problem. And the river should flow to the ocean. And to deny it its right is criminal. The problem is the governments aren't listening to us. They're listening to corporations. They want to make money. They want short-term gain. They want to sacrifice our future, and this is wrong. It has to stop. It has to come to an end. We need to live within our means. We need to live with the river and not against it.
The Snowy River, the mighty Snowy. Immortalised by Banjo Paterson in his poem, The Man from Snowy River, describing a rugged and untamed wilderness where only the toughest could work and live. The Snowy Mountains rivers are unique amongst Australian river systems because the Snowy's source begins in Australia's major alpine region and protected by the Kosciuszko National Park. The Snowy River flows east from these mountains through 2 states as it makes its journey of 450 kilometres to the sea at Marlow in Victoria. The call to irrigate Australia's dry inland in the wake of a series of droughts led to proposals to redirect the Snowy's waters west as early as the 1880s. The simple concept was to trap the snowmelt in the upper reaches. These montane or mountain rivers would then be diverted to the west through a series of dams and tunnels to the Murray and Murrumbidgee river systems for irrigation, and using the energy created as the water falls to generate electricity. But when Australians were told that the mighty Snowy River was flowing at only 1% of its original flow below Jindabyne Dam, they became alarmed. During the 1990s, residents who live along the river, fed up with 40 years of neglect, decided to take action to try and restore some environmental flows and health back into the river. The story you're about to see is a story of the fight to save the Snowy River.
So we've lost our respect for the Snowy River. We have turned the Snowy River into a senile stream, and it needs new life. The arteries need to be flushed out and a new pulse of life brought into it.
Anyone that saw it 40 years ago and saw it today would cry. They just wouldn't believe how it's scrubbed up, messed up.
I think they overdone it with taking 2/3 out of the river. It is no longer a natural boundary. We have country that run onto the Snowy River, well done it. The park can drive through your country, but you can't drive through theirs.
There we are, where the pine-clad ridges rise their tall and rugged battlements on high. And that's the Snowy River country.
And I think that the mountains have gone back, and the huts and cottages and instead look to be sad and lonely.
You know, in the early days when I was only a bit of a kid, well, I used to go with my father down there. I suppose I wouldn't have been any more than 8 or 10-year-old. And you'd get to the Snowy River and just the beauty of it and the majesty of it and the noise of it was absolutely something that you don't forget.
You know, rivers to me are really the lifeblood of our civilization. As far back as you can go in history, rivers, waterways played a critical role in the development of human civilization. They are the infrastructure of our communities. Water is critical to all of us. Literally, we can't live without it for a few days. So we have to protect our water resources. We have to protect our rivers and the ecology and the diversity that they provide, because it is the essence of who we are. And I would judge a society by how it treats its rivers is a reflection of how it lives as a culture.
Now you can see the flow that's passing through there. That's a pretty minuscule flow. That's the total flow of the Snowy River as it stands at present. The once mighty Snowy River. You could step across that.
To take the whole of a river out of the equation, I think is now being very seriously questioned worldwide. Also, if you look at whether or not there was an impact to, if you like, Kosciuszko National Park as a result of the diversion of streams, etc. Of course there was. Did it have a negative effect on plants and animals? Of course it did. Was there ever an environmental impact study on the Snowy Mountains hydroelectric scheme? Of course there wasn't. It wasn't prudent. And we have to live with that. But what people are saying now is there needs to be some very serious consideration on what's called the triple bottom line. And that is environment, social, and economic.
The Snowy River's been used to sell just about everything. It's been used to sell cars, it's been used to sell meat pies, it's been used to sell, you know, the Olympic Games to the international community. We've used it to sell just about everything except the river itself.
The whole thing about the Snowy Mountains scheme is that it's a water harvesting scheme. They've got every creek, every stream and every river aqueducted and dammed off and tunnelled into a system that puts it into their storages, and they've got two systems basically. They can drop it down out into the west, either through the Murrumbidgee system, through the Tumut, or they can send it down to the south out through the Murray system.
So, you know, we've done the damage now. Let's just repair it. The irrigators on the other side are very irresponsible people, to say the very least. They seem to be, in my opinion, very self-righteous and think that it's God-given right that they should have access to as much water as they like and have no consideration for anybody else on either the Snowy River or even further down south of the Murray to where they are either.
If you look at the effect on a whole river system of what happens when you change the natural flow situation, so a lot of trees have died and a lot of more trees will die. And a lot of that is because the natural flood regimes don't occur anymore. It's all been changed.
And so this is the Snowy River, the mighty Snowy River. Have a look at it. This is the stream that we base our national iconography on, Snowy River. I mean, it's a bed of rocks and it's broken my heart. And you can look back upstream and it's no different. This is where the scheme starts and switches whole sections of river off.
The Snowy scheme it's quite a effective water gathering tool. Like basically the entire system is designed to catch pretty well every drop that falls in the catchment. It was too efficient at catching the water. Basically all the aqueducts and weirs that basically take the water out of all the creeks that flow into the rivers was way too efficient. So out of the Snowy we've lost a bit over 1,000 gigalitres of water out of the Snowy, which is transferred into the Murray and Murrumbidgee rivers. So currently the flows that are being delivered, if you like, the Snowy gives about 500 gigalitres a year to the Murray and about 500 gigalitres a year to the Murrumbidgee. The agreement to return environmental flows is to return just a small portion of that back again, and if like the 28-30% mark is around the 300 odd gigalitres of water. So of the 1,000 gigalitres, it's about a third of the water that we want back.
There's no way of seeing a river like getting in and having a puddle around in it. So we'll get in and have a look and see what the river's telling us about how it's travelling. You can feel what's happening straight away. It's pretty soggy and slippery underneath, and you can feel your feet slipping down into about 10 or 20 centimetres of soft, slimy mud. You can pick it up and you can see the really fine black silt and mud that's in there. That really is an indication of the work that needs to be done. This is the easy stuff to shift, a couple of thousand megalitres a day. When it starts coming down through the river here, that'll start stripping this fine sediment around. Then once we get in underneath that, you've got to go down about, still going. In fact, it's getting heavier, and you can see that it's a really black oozy sort of clay at the moment. So we haven't even got down. We're probably down about 30 centimetres, and we haven't struck sand yet. We just hit sand, and now, so you've got to go down about 30 centimetres, and you just start to come across some gravelly sort of sand. So you can see the two pieces of work that we need to have to do. One is to strip this fine silt and clay away, and then we'll get down to this sort of gravelly sand, and then we'll have probably about maybe around here 2 metres of that, and then lying somewhere underneath that 2 metres, there's a beautiful old beautiful big cobblestones about this big that underlie, that's the original bed of the Snowy River. So that's our goal over the length of the river, to help the river to chew its way down to that, so that when we get to that stage, then it's really starting to return to some of those really essential characteristics that people know and love from when before it was impacted by damming.
Fantastic, here we are, Snowy River, and the spring melt is on. And this is really full bottle. Have a look at that, the water just pouring down over that little waterfall. So it's a massive watershed. So when the snow melts on, this river is really pumping, and what a beautiful river. It doesn't get much better than this. Really pure water, clean water, full of life and vitality. This is what you call a river that is free, a river that is unregulated, a river that is full of character because it's running as it should run. And this river valley that has been carved, very ancient mountains, it cuts through a fault line. We're on a fault line at the moment, and the water flows down and cuts these fantastic watercourses. Wow, just take a look at this. This is amazing. Look at the height of that wall. This is the snowpack before it's all melted, and we've had that 2 snowfalls in the last fortnight. You can see the top level, the new snow, really quite beautiful. And the size of that wall is truly phenomenal. You can see how a snowpack melts. The river water melts from underneath, and then the whole cornice will collapse down into that river. That's truly phenomenal. This is the Snowy Mountains at its best when it's delivering that fantastic snowpack into the Snowy River. And of course there are quite a few tributaries that are also feeding the river. That these catchments are a natural resource and they're also commons. What we're looking at here is water that is commons, because nobody owns this catchment. The Australian people own the catchment, the Snowy Mountains. Nobody owns the river. The Australian people own the Snowy River. The way we're doing it at the moment, just downstream of here, a couple of kilometres, Guthaga Dam truncates the Snowy River. You don't see a beautiful river like this, you see a dead river with no water. And then another couple of kilometres downstream at Island Bend, the same thing, another monster dam, and there's no water below Island Bend Dam wall. And the Snowy River should look like this all the way to the sea. So that means we need some spills over Guthaga Dam wall permanently, we need spills over the Island Bend Dam wall permanently, and we need good water below Jindabyne. You'll see the vision below Jindabyne where the Snowy River is dead. At the moment, below Jindabyne Dam wall, you get a slight increase in volume in the Snowy River after it's been put through a mini generator that makes virtually no energy. And the water should not be sequestered primarily for energy generation. The majority of people would not realise that it takes dirty coal-fired power energy to pump water between Janama and Talbingo for Tumut 3. So when we're talking about renewable energy, it's actually a mixture of snow, renewable energy, and dirty energy, coal, to make that happen. If the renewable energy system is robbing the Snowy of its vital flows, then you can't call that renewable energy. It's not green energy. We need the Snowy scheme under a public trust, and we need the Snowy River in its entirety flowing with at least 28% natural flow all the way to the sea.
See, the trouble with Snowy Hydro is it clearly sees its purpose in life is to make money, not to provide an essential public service. At the moment, the way Snowy is set up, it's owned 58% by the New South Wales government, 29% by the Victorian government and 13% by the federal government. And Snowy, because it is this sort of quasi-government instrumentality, a lot of the proceeds, say for New South Wales' share of the income, goes direct to the Treasury.
Corporatisation is really a polite way of saying we need to make some money. Their actions would reflect that, and they would be the first to admit it. There is now a time when water is such a scarce commodity that is raising a lot of issues. In doing so, the best way to resolve these issues is together and not with the community. It must be with the community.
I think that the focus is wrong at the present time, and how you turn that around is not easy whilst ever you've got governments looking for dividends, extra dollars from the scheme. So they want it to grow, of course, and maintain that the water is protected. Well, I maintain that the water is not protected. There are a whole raft of issues there that are fairly difficult to overcome.
Obviously an icon of Australia, and being from Western Australia, you always hear about the Snowy, and it's, as I said, it's an icon river across Australia, and I think it's a symbol, or it will become a symbol of how we look after our rivers. We plainly haven't been looking after it, we've been taking water from it, there's been promises made about restoring it, and they haven't been kept. So I think people will look at that and into the future see that the success of the way we managed our rivers is embodied in whether we can look after that river.
The New South Wales EDO looked into the legislation, and there was no way we could actually take the governments to court over not honouring their own legislation, because what was discovered was that the legislation had actually been cleverly crafted to ensure that the governments were under no binding obligation to either return the stage target flows, increase flows, or improve the ecological objectives.
Well, they've switched the river on. the price of power must have gone up, so they figure they'll take a little bit of opportunistic generating. I reckon it must be hot down in Sydney and a whole heap of the crew have switched the air conditioners on, so here we go. They've turned the river on. And you can feel how they've just switched it on, so the water is rising in quantity that's coming out. It's still not really a strong flow. Like where I'm standing now would be pretty well underwater if we were on 2 generators flat out. It depends on the power spike. This is all about opportunistic generating. And put it this way, in the Snowy hydro regime, if there's no demand for electricity, well, of course you'd switch your river off. Hey.
Some pretty well established sort of national and international principles on how much water you can take out of a river. And so a bit of a rule of thumb, but you can generally take up to about 30% of a river's water and not have too much impact upon it unless you're taking it across from, you know, maybe all the low flows. But generally up to 30%'s not too much impact. Once you get into 30 to 70% level of extraction, you're really starting to take a lot of the water out. Unless you manage that river really, really well, you'll be starting to degrade it. You'll be starting to degrade certain aspects of it and the general ecosystem, the ecology of it. Once you start extracting greater than 70% of a river's flows, you really are into very much the red zone, very much the danger zone for that river. So you can imagine that for the Snowy River that had greater than 95% of its flows extracted, it was at the extreme end of water extraction. So that's why, naturally enough, you can see the river in the condition it is now. It was very heavily impacted by having that much water extracted from it.
Well, one of the things that I was keen on doing in 2007 was trying to bring to bear as much Commonwealth resources as we could to achieve the flow targets for the Snowy River. And there'd always been the intention through the SWIOID to achieve as much as possible through purchases of over-allocated water licences and the Water for Rivers program, and achieving savings through other measures on the other side of the ranges. And we were able to succeed. We were successful in getting an extra allocation of $50 million to aid that effort, specifically for the Snowy River.
The community getting increasingly angry about how water's being managed in this country, and I think the broader community is way ahead of governments in terms of what they think needs to happen with water, and they're acknowledging that we need to be living in a much in a water-constrained environment, and we need to be looking after the health of our rivers.
So I started off with the Snowy Genoa Catchment Management Committee, and they were the ones who commissioned the original Snowy Genoa, the Snowy River expert panel, because there was a lot of people then saying, well, you know, the river's in really poor condition, we need to do something about it. And so the Catchment Management Committee said, okay, let's get an objective view, let's get the best science we can to look at it. And so actually the environmental flow assessment of the Snowy River was actually only the second done in Australia. And I think from memory it was the first report that came out. And so it was on the basis of that objective information that the Catchment Management Committee and others then formed up the Snowy River Alliance, which was just in the early days just an alliance of people who were interested in the health of the river and who wanted to know more about, you know, what could be done to the river, what its needs were, did it need environmental flows, what sort of catchment and river rehabilitation works were required. So, you know, obviously the debate's come a long way from there. Then there was the Snowy Water Inquiry, and you know, that was at the time that was one of the largest natural resource management inquiries that had been run in Australia. And obviously that contributed a lot to people's understanding and the debate about what the environmental flow needs of Snowy and other rivers were, but also how to find that water. And obviously that gave rise to the Water for Rivers, the joint government enterprise that's got $300 million to find the water savings to get 212 gigalitres for the Snowy River.
The Water for Rivers program, or Water for Rivers, was set up as the joint government enterprise limited by 3 governments, the state governments of New South Wales, Victoria and the Commonwealth Government, to achieve a 21% of average natural flow in the Snowy River at Jindabyne. That equates to 212 gigalitres per annum. We've been set up for a 10-year period, although it was year 2 by the time we were actually established, so we've effectively had 8 years, or will have 8 years until 2012, which is the sunset clause for Water for Rivers.
This agreement was an international precedent as far as restoring a river, and there was a lot of political mileage made out of that. There was even a change of government in Victoria on that basis. And yet we've still only got another 3% going down the river, and we've had hundreds of millions of dollars spent. If they can't get it right with the Snowy, there's absolutely no hope of getting it right for the Murray. They really have to get their act together. The community have basically, I'd say, completely lost faith in the politicians actually honouring their promises.
Managing issues that are so diverse, where diverse views, like water down the Snowy, is never going to be simple. You know, it's just not the nature of the beast. Like, there are many people down along the Snowy say, well, you know, the river's, you know, dead and we want it back, and equally on the other side we say, well, we've set up a farming operation relies on this amount of water and we're going to go out of business if you take it away. There are a lot of people in the community which are indifferent one way or the other, so there's no simple arrangement. Now, there are some views at the moment as that's not being met, that the accounting is being fudged, if you like, or the water's not going. What some people didn't realise, I think, is that a lot of the water that has been saved on the west is general security water, so it's not there if there's a drought. So it means that if people on the west miss out because it's general security water, the Snowy misses out likewise, and that's probably equitable anyway. So yeah, there's no easy answer, and there'll always be you know, people that see that they're not getting a fair deal, or people are fudging the figures. One answer to that is that much more transparency on behalf of governments and Snowy Hydro.
At the moment, it's the profits of Snowy Hydro appear to come first, the interests of the irrigators second, and the river itself and the natural environment runs a very poor third. Now, I think the environmental interests should move right up to the top, because in terms of generating jobs even in that community, I genuinely believe there is no long-term future for irrigated farming. I think that we're fooling ourselves if we think that's going to be something that's going to provide well for the community or for the environment for more than, you know, for the next 100, 200 years, as was originally envisaged. But what does provide employment up there is the tourist opportunities, the fishing, just the sort of enjoyment of the whole Kosciuszko environment. I think that's the thing that where our long-term future lies.
Well, I think basically it comes back to what the New South Wales EDO recommended, and that is that there has to be independent monitoring. I think the Alliance's position at the moment is that the New South Wales government have been so intransigent about the whole thing. We wait so long to get the most pathetic piece of information, an answer to any sort of question. They will take months to reply or refuse to answer or give a non-answer. That occurs even in Parliament, mind you. I think the Commonwealth Environmental Water Holder needs to take over the management of the Snowy environmental flows and the portion of the Water for Rivers savings that are earmarked for the Murray.
Now, the Snowy Mountain Scheme is registered with the Sustainable Energy Development Authority, and people can elect to pay more for their power bill as a green surcharge, and supposedly that power is accessed from green generators. Now, unfortunately, the Snowy scheme is registered as a green generator. They call themselves renewable, as though it's renewable energy. But my question is, what part of renewable is it for the Snowy River?
Hydropower has never been green. That is a public relations fallacy that the government promotes. Hydropower emits carbon and methane. You know, as you can see, not only is there sediment in the river, but there's leaf litter and driftwood. And these organic materials pile in the reservoir and decay. You know, and it's carbon and methane, and there's hydrogen sulfide, you know, and it creates mud, and it creates dust, and it creates weeds. You know, hydropower is not clean, it's devastating.
It's not green. I mean, have a look at the colour of the water, it's brown. And really, I think, just like coal burning power seen as brown power production, so is electricity from the Snowy Mountain scheme. Until they put environmental flows in the Snowy River, it can't be called green. It's actually doing so much damage to the whole concept of green. How can you justify spending more money on your power bill so that you get electricity that's been accessed from the Snowy Mountain scheme? It's not a green operator.
The main message for governments is that they have to realize that they've made some mistakes. They need to do studies that are honest. They shouldn't be piecemeal issues where we just study one dam at a time. They should encompass the entire watershed. They should address all the issues from water supply, sediment, endangered species, sustainability, energy, and something that is comprehensive and broad and well financed, so that we can solve these huge problems that we've created as a result of neglect.
I don't think most Australians really know what we've done to the Snowy, and I think it wasn't until the campaign really kicked in to try and restore environment flows that people did get very angry at what had occurred.
So what have we got? We started off with 1%, 1967. In 2000, there was a commitment to fund 21% in another 10 years by 2010, it was then. Took another 2 years to get the agreement going. So then it was put back another 2 years, so it was 21% would be funded and come down the river and 70 gigs for the Murray by 2012. It's now 2009 and we're still sitting on 4%.
We're coming into a place here just above Jindabyne Dam and downstream, and we just come across the most incredible sight. Have a look at it. They've switched the river on. It's incredible. They're pumping the water out there. That's about 300 megalitres a day, and if you consider that Canberra consumes over 100 megs a day in winter, that's a significant amount of water. Here it is in August 2009, and they've finally started to put the water in. It's the most beautiful view of it. So have a look at it, it's just pouring out of there. It's pure hydraulics just pumping out. A spectacular display of water. It looks like a lot of water, but in reality, it's actually only 100 megalitres a day more than the absolute minimum for the Snowy stream, which was 200 a day. That was what the expert panel said 13 years ago. So now we've got 100 megalitres a day on top of what the bare minimum for the river should be. So we're just below the outlet works of the Jindabyne Dam there, and what we're actually looking at here is the old Snowy River siphon pipe. This was how they used to deliver the whole of the Snowy River through a 50 centimetre diameter pipe for over 35 years. This was it. We used to get from 25 to 50 megalitres of water a day, and it's just hard to believe that this was the Snowy River for that long. This is the way we used to do it. Now we're delivering 300 megalitres a day up there, so that's 6 times the amount we used to get out of the siphon pipe.
Woo! Look at that. That is an amazing vision of the water coming out of those diffuser nozzles. So this is a true snowy environment. as you come through this valley, and suddenly we're about to descend down to a gorge, and it's actually the drop from the mountains to the sea that creates that velocity in the river. And that's what's really important for its health, is the volume and velocity of water that scours out the bank, and it enables platypi and further downstream the Australian bass, it's their habitat, a myriad of water birds. And you know, that's how the river should always be. It's quite beautiful. Just to let water into the river here is worth 20 million at least in fishing for the local community. So there are definite economic benefits. Once there's more water, you'll find that there'll be more canoeists and kayakers and fishing people. And you know, it's a great area for people to come for a holiday. So you can see the benefits of just putting a bit of water in the Snowy River. It's just fantastic. And in Dalgety, of course, it used to be the capital for fishing and a thriving community. So once there's more water in the river, that particular town, Dalgety, will begin to flourish again.
I think that there's certainly a stronger support now in the community, I think, for the Commonwealth to take control of decision making, or have one body in charge of decision making. Because at the moment what you've got is Commonwealth versus New South Wales versus the ACT versus Victoria. You've got a recipe for disaster where one state, you know, we've got a classic example where Victoria holds a lot of things up, sometimes New South Wales does. The laws aren't consistent. The catchment planning processes aren't consistent, so you have a mishmash, and it's proved to be a failure for over a century. There is certainly a need to do things differently and to get consistent laws across all of that catchment. And there's more and more call, I think, for the federal government to take control. Now, I've got to say there, I haven't been shown evidence that Commonwealth Scott will make some of the strong decisions that need to be made, but at least one body can then be held responsible. At the moment, you see it all the time. The Commonwealth bounces, oh, it's New South Wales government's fault there for not having the regulations in place to stop water being stolen. Oh, it's Victoria's problem there because of the cap. Oh, it's the Queensland government because their laws aren't in place. And then the Queensland can ping the Commonwealth. You're having this blame game all the time. It's been going on now for over a century. It's time it stopped.
Now this is one dam, one river. You only have to acquire the savings are released. It's a simple process. It's not like the Murray where there's endless amount of dams. Where's the water going once it's released from one dam? Is it going to irrigators? Is it going down the river? The whole difficulty of accounting for all that. Here we have water savings being acquired by one single body, Water for Rivers. They're signed off onto the entitlement register. They should be being released from the Jindabyne Dam.
Well, I think a lot of Americans do know about the man from Snowy River. You know, part of the reason I'm here today is to learn, educate myself about these issues and take this message back with regard to the current problem on the Snowy River and share it as an international message and a vision for how we can restore a river, and hopefully use the success here, if in fact there is success, to inspire other communities to take on a similar challenge. If it's a failure here, unfortunately, it will simply be added to another long list of failures on our waterways and how we have not been able to come together and find solutions that protect our communities, protect the infrastructure of our communities, and you know, that'll be a shame.
Have a look at these rocks. They're just so smooth, water-worn, so powerful. But it's quite naughty to be able to stroke the skeleton of a river. Usually when you're touching the skeleton of a beast, it means it's dead. And this is a river that's still dying. It hasn't achieved its total level of collapse yet. And the equation is water. This river needs more water in this. It's such an important thing that we get this environmental flow campaign right. If we can't get it right for the Snowy River, what chance is there for the Murray-Darling Basin? Snowy River's the model that shows how Australians are capable of managing their water resource. And it means that every river is sacred to its minimum sustainable flow. We've got to get the figure right. What is the minimum sustainable flow?